today's episode, we have Jordan Winkleman. I'm very grateful to have met Jordan and to become friends with him. I met him back when I was living in Medellin, Colombia. I was living in his house, which he calls the high performance house. And very quickly, I saw that Jordan has the most disciplined and healthiest habits of anyone I've ever met. And after getting to know him, I realized this was no accident. He wasn't born this way. It all came from his deep exploration and wanting to understand the science of habits. And that's what he's going to share with you today. He's going to share with you how you can create habits to get practically anything you want, whether it's better health, confidence, productivity, more connections. It all has to do with habits, and he's going to show you exactly why today and how you can create those habits to get the life that you want. Let's dive into it. All right. Welcome to the podcast, Jordan Winkleman.
Thank you. Yeah. Glad to be here.
Hell yeah. So I met Jordan a few years ago in Medellin. Jordan runs he's currently in another house, but he used to run the high performance house in Medellin. It's a beautiful house with it's got like an ice bath, steam room, and it's just like the decoration in this house is like just the best decoration I've seen in anywhere I've been, because it's just filled with all these like beautiful quotes by just really remarkable people, and it's just got this beautiful energy that just makes you want to just be healthy and have good habits. And I've just seen Jordan while living with him, and I've never seen anyone with just healthier habits and this more consistent habits. And I realized it was completely intentional. Jordan really studied these things, and he made it a real big part of his life. And he's helped me a lot on my journey to adopt better habits. So yeah, that's what we want to dive into on this call. And yeah, why don't we dive right into it? I see Jordan's already got the blue blockers on. He actually recommended these for me also, because I think it's evening time in Medellin. And yeah, before we get into how to build habits and the habits you have, how about let's just tell our listeners what did your life look like before you made habits so intentional? Because I know you didn't just like wake up like this and have all these incredible habits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was almost 5.5 years ago when I actually met. So I was in Medellin, and I met this guy named Mo. He was one of my roommates at the time, and he just had this really great energy to him. And there was something about him that I was attracted to and wanted to be more like, right? His very inspirational energy, you could say. And I'm 30 years old now, and for 25 years of my life, I didn't really have a purpose. I didn't really have a mission, or it wasn't very clearly defined, right? It was, we talk about, when we grow up with our parents in our, what Vishen Lakhiani talks about as the culture scape, right? We get conditioned to whatever is around us, right? Whether it's our siblings, our parents, our friends, as we grow up, right? So all of that conditioning, eventually, it happens to everybody. And eventually we need to take control of that process. We need to take control and realize that we are the drivers, right? Rather than sitting in the passenger seat, take hold of the wheel and drive, and take control of your life essentially by, one way, a big way is through your daily habits, right? So, for 25 years of my life, I was sitting in the passenger seat, right? And I didn't know, and I didn't really fully understand that I had the power to essentially program the programs that were empowering, right? And specifically uninstall the programs that were running my life, right? And the very first book that really made things click, right? Mo, my roommate at the time, he showed me Joe Dispenza. He showed me specifically the book of Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, right? I had these very disempowering habits of shame, of guilt, of, yes, I would go to the gym and these sorts of things. And kind of on the outside, I looked good. I looked healthy. I had money, but on the inside, I was very insecure. I was very driven by guilt, driven by shame, and driven by fear, right? Because of because of previous conditioning and never getting into the driver's seat and really taking control of my life, right?
Yeah. So it's through that
So,
inspiration. Yeah.
that's why I started the high performance house, was because I realized that, through, it can happen in various ways, right? It can happen via inspiration, or it can happen via pain, right? A loss of a
Mm,
loved one, a loss of a leg, right? Like, to really awaken ourselves to realize that we're in control of we are the co-creators of our lives, right? And really take control of that process, right? Everybody has a different, some people are still sleeping, of course, and everybody has a different story of kind of like what awoken them, you could say, right?
mm,
And well, and other people, and then once they do wake up, right? You can't really go back to sleep like you were. You can a little bit, right? You can
mm,
doze off and these sorts of things, but and different people take it to different lengths, right? Once they do awaken, right? Like, um, there's different intensities or different levels of commitment to really, I guess, being the co-creator of your life, right?
mm.
Creating those visions, or manifesting those visions or those dreams that you have into reality through the daily process of your daily habits, right?
Hmm. Yeah, totally. And yeah, like you said, I really believe once people start to wake up, start to see that they can actually co-create their life and to grow, I think, people never go back and like never want to go back to a sleep. Like maybe they're not doing it as high intensity as some people, but I think you never regress back to that because you see what's possible once you realize like you can actually change, you can grow, you can become the person you want. And was there like a moment for you this change, or was it like you said you met Mo? Was it kind of a gradual process, or was there kind of like a moment that you realized like I can change and like you are now just kind of passionate about this growth journey?
Yeah, a combination, right? There was multiple eureka moments that you could say, right? Like, for example, of reading what Joe Dispenza writes about breaking the habit of being yourself, and his other books, etc. Right? Like, there was a lot of eureka moments of like, oh my gosh, that's why XYZ, right? Like, that's why, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, reading other books as well, like, you know, reading the book of Tiny Habits or Atomic Habits, right? Um, these eureka moments kind of leveling up and recognizing that, oh, that's why it's so hard to, start a new habit. Well, we make it really hard for ourselves. And the solution is to make it super fucking easy, right? Make it a
Yeah,
tiny thing so that you can get into momentum. And once you have momentum, well, everything is 10 times easier, right?
totally. Yeah. So it's really that there was a spark and then there was this gradual momentum of inspiration and then it just kind of catapulted from there. And so that's kind of the before. So let's give our listeners here, what does the after look like? What is your life looking like now?
Yeah, I guess it's a endlessly evolving process, right? So,
Hmm.
it's not the destination, it is the journey, it is the daily process, right? And the idea, what it looks like now, is enjoying the day-to-day process, right? Rather than thinking like, oh, I'll be happy when I have $1 million in the bank or XYZ, right? Really enjoying the effort that goes into the daily process, right? I do daily ice baths, I do daily saunas, I do daily, exercise, movement, except, bike rides, strength training, speed reading, journaling, meditation, etc. Right? All of these, I put together all of these tiny habits, right, to build a really fantastic foundation, right, which I
Hmm.
can build upon, which, essentially at the end of the day, right, what I'm focused on is kind of showing up on a moment to moment basis with high frequency energy, right, so that I can
Hmm.
close the gap between what I'm doing now and what I'm capable of doing, right? So that essentially I can serve the collective consciousness profoundly, right? So that I can
Mhm.
inspire others to do the same, right? So that I can
Mhm.
raise the level, the level of, or the collective consciousness level, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And I think of it kind of in the same way. It's all about, for me, developing better habits. I mean, a huge part of it is all about feeling more energy. Because the more energy, energy is life. The more energy I have, the more I can give to my relationships, to the work I'm doing. And yeah, like you said, the collective consciousness and helping people. And it's all about increasing your energy. And I'm curious for you, was there, if you think about kind of like the 80/20 principle, were there certain habits or certain parts of your routine, like whether in the morning that or at night, that dramatically made a bigger size impact on your energy levels?
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be different for everybody, but there's like some foundational habits that you could say
Mm,
that are going to serve different people to different levels, but in some fashion or another, right? Such as meditation, such as journaling or some sort of reflection, right? Whether it's a audio voice memo or, physically writing down or typing down, reflection of the day or etc. Or some sort of intention setting, right? It could just be speaking that out loud. It could be writing it down, etc. Right? So meditation, journaling, movement, right? Sleep, and nutrition, right? The
mm.
foundations for, I guess, really setting yourself up for success of having a high probability of showing up with that high frequency energy, right?
Mhm. Yeah, totally. And how about now let's dive into, if let's say someone is at a point where they really don't have any habits, or they have habits, but they're just not good habits, and they've never been intentional about it. Maybe they wake up in the morning, they snooze a bit, they immediately check their phone, they eventually get out of bed, and then they just go and start their day, or they go like, brush your teeth or whatever. And now they want to have, a better morning routine. What would be the process? What process would you give them, if you were going to help them to develop those habits?
Yeah, I think, right, like habits, I think is one part of the equation, right? If you look at it like a computer, um, habits are the software that is on the computer, right? So the
Yeah.
software that's running, right? But the belief system is the hardware, right? There's different ways to attack the belief system, but in terms of just focusing on the software, anyways, right? I think starting off with why, right? Starting off with a vision or a mission or something that gets you excited, right? Whatever
Mhm.
that might be, whether it's working on a project, whether that's, raising your daughter, whether that's XYZ, right?
Mhm.
Starting there, right? Like what sort of things kind of light that fire, right?
Yeah.
And then, or like pull you out of bed, for example, right? In the morning.
Yeah.
Um,
So like developing a
and
strong
then
why.
developing a strong why, right? And really, there's various ways, various exercises, methods, techniques, etc. to do that, to really clarify what that might be. And you don't have to figure it all out at the beginning, right? But just have something that kind of sparks that fire, right?
Right.
On a daily
Yeah.
basis. Um, and essentially, you know, we can starting in the morning, and so what Brian Johnson refers to as the AM bookend and the PM bookend, right? Where the first thing you do in the morning and the last thing you do at night, right? Kind of starting there in terms of setting up a foundation for habits and a foundation for success, right? Um, so, it doesn't really matter per se what that habit is, whether it's making your bed first thing in the morning or meditating or journaling, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Take something that you enjoy doing, that you want to do more of, and do it first thing in the morning, right? And then I
Hmm.
would also do the same thing, kind of wind down PM bookend at night as well, right? They talk about why focus on the AM, the AM and PM bookends is because, well, that's when you have most control of your time, when there's less distractions, these sorts of things, there's less things going on. So you're much more likely to be able to do, whether it's journaling, whether it's meditating, etc. Right? And start again, like start very small, right? If you want to develop a meditation habit, right? Like start with 1 minute, start with 5 minutes, right? Like don't try to, dive into the deep
Mm-hmm.
end, because you'll get right back out and you'll be like, man, that's not for me, type thing, right? You
Yeah.
know, put your 2 feet in at the shallow end and slowly but surely walk to the deep end, right?
Yeah. And can you
In the
explain a
book.
bit on about habits, about why doing, because yeah, I think it's so important to start with something small and then you can build on that. But just from like, the habits, the science of habits, why does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, exactly. So in the book, The Tiny Habits, for example, right, it talks about um, essentially Newton's law of motion, right? When an
Mm-hmm.
object is at rest, it will stay in rest. And when an object is in motion, it will tend to stay in motion, right? So the idea is that it takes more willpower, it takes more energy from, for example, just me sitting to standing up, right? When I'm already sitting, it's easier for me to stay sitting. If I stood up, it would be easier for me to stand up, right? So same thing goes with any habit, right? Such as a meditation habit. If you know, just start with 1 minute, right? And that's your goal for the day, for example, right? Boom, anybody can do 60 seconds of, breathe, conscious, intentional breathing, right? In their meditation. And now they're in motion, right? And now it's much easier to, you have to experience it to really understand. But when you get into motion, then it's much easier to continue, right? You know, Such as, they talk about like if you wanted to build a running habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start with putting on your shoes, right? That's the goal. Your goal is to put on your socks, put on your running shoes, and that's it, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
once you do that, you'll realize, oh, like, why wouldn't I go running now? Right?
Mm-hmm.
The goal doesn't even have to be the habit that you want. It can be, I can't remember the term exactly, a pre-trigger or something of the sort, but something that you do before the habit so that you, again, the whole idea is to get yourself in motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And get yourself with some momentum, right? That's on a daily basis. And then, of course, building the momentum on a day-to-day basis, on a week basis, on a monthly basis, etc., right? Not breaking that chain. Well, then you'll recognize that, like, this is just what you do. You just do what you did yesterday. And well, if what you did yesterday was good for you or good for your energy and was empowering, well, you're much more likely to repeat those behaviors and habits that you did yesterday, right? So building
Mm-hmm.
momentum over a long period of time, over ideally years, right? Because what
Mm-hmm.
happens is, the I guess the a huge reason why focus on habits and specifically tiny habits is because you can turn tiny habits into extraordinary results, right? Using the compounding effect, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is essentially tiny habits compounded over a long period of time, years, right, will turn into extraordinary results, right? A 1 minute meditation habit
Mm-hmm.
over several years, is going to be fantastic for your emotional stamina, for your self mastery, etc. Right? But
Mm-hmm.
just 1 minute a day, it's tiny, right?
Yeah.
But you put all of these tiny little building blocks together, like Legos or whatever, right? And you using the compounding effect, the results will blow your mind.
Yeah, yeah. Just like how James Clear talks about. I mean, similar to finance, if you're compounding money, if you increase 1% every day for a year, you're not 365% better because, each one, the second day you're 1.1% better, not just an
Mhm.
extra 1% better. So it turns into a huge amount in the long run. And the next question a lot of people ask is, so yeah, start with small habits. That I think that's super powerful. A lot of people want to all of a sudden have like all these perfect habits, copy someone else and they do it for a few days because they have the motivation and then it goes away. it doesn't last. So it is so important to just start with small habits that you can do and just make that the goal. Like I just want to put on my shoes or meditate for 1 minute, and they'll get that momentum and then they can build on it. Another question a lot of people always ask is, how long does it take to build a habit?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Like, honestly, like, there's science that says 30 days, there's science that says 66 days, but like, it really doesn't matter how many days exactly it is, right? It's going to be different for
Mm,
everybody. And essentially, it doesn't matter what you want to aim for, what the goal is to enjoy what the hell you're doing on a daily basis, right? To start, you might not enjoy your 5 minute meditation for the first week, for the first month, for the first year, right? You might not enjoy it, but you want to get to the point where, right, like you're not necessarily doing it for any other reason than to do it to and enjoy that process of doing it, right? Enjoy that process of whether it's meditating, journaling, etc., right? Whether you get into a flow state or something of the sort, right? Or dopamine is released, right? I think it was Andrew Haberman, or can't remember his last name, but he talks about, right, like, rather, the biggest motivation doesn't come from, right, the biggest motivation is going to be when you start enjoying the process, when you focus your
mm,
attention on the process rather than the end result, right? And when you can start enjoying those daily habits rather than trying to get to 30 days or 66 days, right? You can use that in the beginning to get yourself fired up, to get yourself motivated, but it will not last, right? It is not
mm,
a sustainable motivation, right? And a
mm,
sustainable motivation needs to come from within. It needs to be from an intrinsic value of, also what from Atomic Habits, right? He talks about identity, right? Changing your identity to be,
mm.
whether it's not, slowly but surely changing your identity from not being a meditator to being a person who meditates on a daily basis, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And going into, you said I could definitely resonate with learning to enjoy the process. Because I used to be someone who exercised, only because I had to. But now I enjoy my workouts. I love doing yoga. I've learned to just and I don't actually know exactly how I did it. Even for like meditation, I started with trying to make it a habit, doing 10 minutes. Now I do like an hour in the morning, hour at night, and I wish I could be there longer. Like I'm just so in love with
Yeah.
just I find so much peace in
Mhm.
it. But how would you recommend someone to learn to enjoy the process? Because I think most people, you know, they think about exercising and they hate it. It doesn't sound enjoyable at all for them. So I think when you say
Right.
enjoy the process, for a lot of people, they have no idea like how to do that. So is there any recommendations you'd give to someone on how to enjoy the process?
Yeah, it's it's funny. It's it's only going to develop over time, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
the best thing to do is to make it easy for you to stay in momentum, right? For example, if you are meditating for 1 minute a day and you do that for 30 days, don't increase your meditation time to 1 hour now because, well, now
Yeah.
you're good to go. Now you're gonna, don't dive into the deep end yet, right? Just take it step by step, right? Increase your meditation time if you would like to, yes. But the more important thing isn't about the time or the duration. It's about, again, the consistency, right? Consistency is the exponentializer in the equation of success, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Consistency is the only way in which we can take hold of the compounding effect to its full capacity or its full potential, right? So I don't care if it's great if you meditate. It doesn't in an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours, like it doesn't make any difference per se. What matters
Mm-hmm.
more is if you're doing it every single day, no matter what, right? So, I can't remember which book, Tiny Habits or Atomic Habits, etc., but they talk about setting kind of a baseline, right? Like, and using, it's actually in tiny habits, right? Like, so using the baseline, right? Like if you were sick, if you were feeling terrible, if you had a hangover, if you just felt shitty, would you still be able to do the habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of habits that you want to install, right? You know, when you're feeling your worst, you still are able to do it, right? And that's the only way in which you will be able to really fully maximize the potential of the compounding effect, right? Because you never
Mm-hmm.
break that chain. And yes, of course, there are going to be, you know, you will break that chain at some point of time, and that's fine. But then the very next day, you just reconnected and then you continue for X amount of time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So consistency is absolutely the key. So people should really, and that's why doing, starting small makes so much sense because you can be consistent so much easier than trying to have some huge goal where you're just going to end up plateauing or just not keeping that motivation in a few days. And by keeping small habits, you just build that momentum and just, yeah, compounds on each other. Yeah, makes
Mm-hmm.
perfect sense. And I think it would be helpful for listeners to, I think, all this does, make sense. I think for a listener, they will love to go into a little more detail onto, certain things they're trying to change, maybe for exercise, for example. So if someone is trying to, there's someone who doesn't exercise or they exercise kind of randomly, like on and off, but they want to build consistent exercise habits, how would you help them?
Yeah, I mean, you know, like a couple of different things, right? Like, you know, making it easier for yourself in some fashion, right?
Mm,
You know, setting up those, you know, setting yourself up for success, right? For example, you know, every night, you know, I fill up my water bottle, I put some magnesium salt, I put some mineral drops, etc., right? And that's for me for the next morning, right? That's not for
mm,
me to drink that night.
yeah.
That's for me to grab my water bottle the next morning and drink it, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, using your environment and using different cues, right,
Right.
to set yourself up for success, right? You know, if you want to go running on a consistent basis, you know, you don't have to put on your running shoes and go to sleep, right? You could if you were, you know, that would work. You know, that would really be great. But at least put your running shoes right at the side of your bed where you know you're going to wake up the next morning, right? So that you see those running shoes and boom, you know, then trigger to put them on, put on your socks, whatever, etc. Right? So using your environment to really set yourself up for those cues, for those triggers, right? So that it's the idea is that you want to set it up so that there's not a lot of thinking involved, right? Because once
Right.
we get, you know, the analytical thinking involved, we're going to think ourselves out of our habits, out of, you know, running in the morning or meditating, etc. Right? You know, so using your environment in that way to really set yourself up for success and trigger those cues. And again, it comes down to making it really easy for yourself, right? So putting that meditation cushion right next to your bed, right? You know, I sleep literally next to a yoga mat, yoga, you know, meditation cushion, infrared
Hmm.
sauna, right? So I wake up and I wake up out of my bed and just kneel down and start meditating, right? Like it's so
Mm,
easy. And that's why it's so
yeah.
consistent, right? Because I've made it so easy.
Yeah. So like intentionally setting up your environment in a way where these cues would just be completely obvious. You don't need to do willpower every single time because you just see it and you just start acting. And like you said, yeah, you don't want to make it where the analytical brain has to think a lot because yeah, then you will think yourself out of it, come up with some excuse that sounds logical at the moment. So making it as simple and easy as possible. And how about for, sticking with exercise, if people want to decide, what type of exercise to even do, and how to, what habits to create around that, what would you say to them?
I mean, like, you know, start where you are, right? Like some people, you know, whether it depends whether or not you've been exercising for on and off already, if you kind of know some different exercise techniques or movements, etc., at the gym. So, you know, do right, like do whatever is easy. If you have a bicycle at home that you haven't used, well, right? Like it's time to get it out of the garage and put it next to your bed so that you get
Mhm.
out of bed and use it, right? Or if you don't know what to do, obviously there's tons and tons of different workout programs online. Um, or just go on YouTube. There's so much, 10-minute yoga, for example, right? There's so
Mhm.
much free content out there to at least get you started, right? And again, as you were talking about before, right? Like, yes, it's easy to think about and want, right? Okay, I go from not so many good habits to, perfect habits tomorrow. Well, that's not going to happen. It's going to happen slowly, gradually, step by step over time. But if you put these, and focus on kind of one or two habits at a time, right? Don't try to change your life
Yeah.
all, overnight, right? So
Right.
pick something that's important to you that has meaning, right? In this case, maybe it's exercise, right? So, get those dumbbells at home rather than at the gym, right? Rather than needing to drive to the gym, get a set of dumbbells at home to at least get yourself in some sort of momentum, right? And then, okay, right, when you're ready to take the next step, then you can on the daily basis drive to the gym, right? Because now you've been in motion for some weeks or months, etc. And you're ready to take that next step, right? So start wherever you are, evaluate, right? This is where meditation is super helpful, is because it develops your self-awareness of of your body, of your mind, etc. So it's easier to determine, okay, this is where I am now. This is where I want to be, right? This is my
Hmm.
vision for the future. But hey, I got to start. I got to start by taking the next baby step, and then I'll take the next baby step, right, and work my way
Hmm.
up to that future vision.
Yeah, I think what you said makes is really powerful. Focus not on what you're doing, exactly what the exercise is. Focus more on how consistent you're doing it. Because once you build that into a habit, you can you can kind of like blocks. You can take away this block and put in another exercise that you want to try. But you can only do that because you're consistently, exercising. Similarly with even my morning routine, now it lasts about an hour and a half, and it's always every few weeks to months. I change things. I test different things, and it's so easy because I already have that foundation of habits I'm already doing, and it kind of just like blocks that I can just interchange at any time. But the key is, yeah, so don't focus on what the exercise needs to be. Doing the perfect workouts, finding the perfect you know fitness routine, finding the perfect diet. It's just doing something on a consistent basis, because then you know, you can you can add in different things, remove things, as that fits you.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And how about yeah, I think you did give a good framework of how people can develop habits. But I think, some people still really want to get in. It'll be helpful for them to get into details of habits they're trying to do in certain areas. So how about with like productivity? A lot of people are, really struggling nowadays, especially with with phones and stuff, technology. People are finding it hard to get focused work done. So what are some habits that you'd recommend, or just processes that would help people here?
Yeah, so they talk about like whatever area that you want to improve in your life, right? The way in which you're going to see the most improvement fastest is by removing the things that are hindering your focus or productivity in this case, right? So
Mm.
starting with the things that you're going to stop doing, right? So for example, right, stop looking at WhatsApp or whatever messaging application you use, stop looking at it after the sun goes down on a weekday basis, right? So that you can wind down, you're not blowing up your limbic system. You can go and meditate, etc., whatever it might be, wind down and get ready for a good night of sleep, right?
Hmm.
So I lost my train of thought. What's
And how about for
what were
people
we
like
talking about?
wanting to be productive? They're on a laptop, or they maybe work from home, and they're kind of surrounded by all the stuff that can distract them. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, how can they, what are some, how would you help them to really focus and get the most out of their day as far as being productive with their work?
Right. Yeah.
Like these people, they
Like,
know they shouldn't be using their phone. They know that this stuff is distracting them, but they fall into it. They're kind of addicted to it. They're already in the habit of doing these things. How do you get them out of that?
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. How do you stop doing the things that you know that are not serving you? Right.
Yeah.
I pull up YouTube to do some breath work as well, like on a morning basis, right? And I see these YouTube video shorts, right? And they immediately grab my attention, right?
Hmm.
I can feel it. And sometimes I do click on like, oh, like cool nature, shark attack, whatever, right?
Hmm.
And I can feel myself getting sucked into it, right? So, I think a big part of this whole process is letting go of shame, letting go of essentially feeling bad about doing the things that you know are not good for you, right? If you feel, what he talks about in tiny habits is the only way in which behavior change happens is when you feel good, right? So if you're beating yourself up over, oh, like I just spent, 2 hours on YouTube while I should have been working, right? You're not feeling good about yourself, and that the dialogue in your head is not supporting you, right? So
Hmm.
you're much more probable to repeat that behavior, right? That behavior that you know is going to repeat the shame cycle, right?
Mm. And can you
So
explain that shame cycle a little bit? I think that would be really powerful for people to understand.
absolutely. So, again, it's beating yourself up over something that you know you shouldn't be doing, right? Or, such as some sort of distraction, right? Or eating the cake, um, you know, each and every night. Paying attention to the dialogue that is happening in your head when you do the behaviors that you know you shouldn't be doing or shouldn't be doing so frequently, right? And essentially changing that dialogue, right? Changing that
Hmm.
dialogue from putting yourself down, right, to building yourself up, right?
Hmm.
And that can be done in various ways. But
And why does shame, like why is it a cycle? Like why is it if you feel shame about, eating that cake, why is it more likely to get you to eat a cake again? A lot of people might think if I feel bad about it, it means I'm not going to do it again. And it doesn't make sense
yeah,
for them.
yeah, yeah. I guess that's a rational thought to have, right? That seems to make sense, but
Hmm.
it's it's the frequency that you're emitting is going to be the frequency or the energy that you're emitting, right? In this case, shame or disappointment, right? This lower frequency energy that you're now emitting, this is going to be the same frequency that you're attracting, right? And that you're essentially kind of telling your subconscious, right? This is the kind of energy that I want to be around. And your subconscious will make sure that that happens, right? And that could be
Hmm.
the following day eating that cake again, right? Or eating that
Hmm.
slice of cake again, right? So that you feel the same way, right? Even though it doesn't feel good, right? Even though it doesn't feel good, you are always going to attract and essentially receive and manifest the same energy that you cultivate, that you generate, that you emit, right? So
Hmm.
that's why that cycle happens that's why there's the shame cycle. But on the flip side, that's why there's the virtuous cycle of, when you feel good about doing that 1 minute meditation, well, guess what? Tomorrow, you're much more likely and there's much higher probabilities that you're going to do the 1 minute meditation again, and you're going to receive
Hmm.
that good feeling of, oh yes, I can do this, right? Of accomplishment, of gratitude, etc. Right?
Yeah, I really resonate with the shame cycle, and I know how important it is. Personally, me, I used to be just really addicted to sex. When I was even when I was in Colombia, not when I was living with you, the time I was there before. I was really just addicted to sex. So many beautiful girls there. A lot of prostitution there that's like easily accessible. And I remember every time I would kind of like willfully try not to get into that. But then when I do, it sparks just like a cycle where I'm just like the next few days, like weeks, I'm just all focused on sex. And it's because of the shame cycle. It was because I realized, I always told myself, I just did it, it was bad. It's like, I might as well just keep doing it. Like, I might as well like get it all out of me. And it was really that shame cycle. And it was only until I understood that I was really able to get out of it because I really worked worked on that sex addiction about a year and a half ago. But there was a time, like less than a year ago, where I did fall into that again. But immediately, once I did it, I was very conscious of the internal dialogue, the shame that was starting to happen. And I just allowed myself to, just be kind to myself and not feel shameful about it. And what would have happened in the past, it would have sparked a chain reaction where the next few weeks it would have, took over my life. But this time, because I was able to just, notice that shame cycle and break it before it, gone wild, that cycle never started. It was that one time thing, and months after, it didn't spark any cycle. So I know how powerful this shame cycle can be, and just identifying it and breaking it before it controls you and into all those negative patterns.
Exactly that. Yeah. It's as right. And now you're seeing the flip side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of that virtuous cycle, right? Of doing the things that give you good energy and that are good for you. Well, that gets the ball rolling, that gives you momentum, and then you're much more likely to do other things that are good for you and that make you feel good and that are empowering, right? This is why
Yeah.
there's a book called Make Your Bed, right? It's by a Navy SEAL, and
Mm.
the whole base of the book is this idea of that you each and every day, you essentially, in this case, you make your bed very first thing in the morning to get that virtuous cycle ball rolling, right? So that it's then easier to meditate, to do exercise, to journal, to eat well, eat healthy, etc. Right? Because you've built that momentum right first thing in the morning, right? If you wake up and you look at your phone and scroll on Facebook for, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever, right? Well, you've now started that that ball in the wrong direction. Now it's going, downhill into, it could be shame, it could be disappointment, it could be lower frequency energy, right? And now you're much more likely to skip the meditation, to eat the, chocolate cake or whatever, right? And so it works both ways, right? For better
Mm-hmm.
and worse.
Yeah, exactly. And now, like thinking about the higher frequency, the better frequencies, for me, habits are really revolved around now just self-love because, everything I'm doing is really, I'm doing it to love myself, and it feels so good. When I do yoga, it feels so good, and I know just how like kind and nurturing I am being to my body. When I'm meditating, I know how kind I'm being, to my mind and just overall life. And I think just for me, just putting it in that perspective of this is all self-love and this is being kind to myself just allows me to feel good while I'm doing it and gets me to consistently do it. I think a lot of people, they misinterpret what self-love is. So a lot of people think of it as like self-indulgence. It means that you let yourself just eat that cake, even though you don't, it's bad for you. And it also means if you do something, you be loving to yourself and you don't let that shame cycle to control you because yeah, like you said, it's not going to actually help you. It's going to have a kind of downward spiral effect. And we
Exactly
just
that,
have
right?
a few minutes left, but I really quickly wanted to, I don't know if this is going to be a short answer, but you started off by
Mm.
saying a lot of what you read was about breaking the habits of guilt and shame. I think a lot of people, nobody really thinks about guilt and shame as being a habit. They think of exercise, food, all that stuff that all makes sense as habits. So how do you break the habits of guilt and shame? And just describe that process or like what it even means.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question, right? And it's going to be different for everyone. However, I think one of the keystone habits is cultivating awareness, right? That's usually done by some form of meditation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's kind of the strongest way to cultivate that awareness. That because the awareness is a muscle, right? So, going to the mind gym, right? The meditation, right, will help
Mm-hmm.
you see the shame cycle that you might be in. It will help you see the virtuous cycle that you might be in as well, right? It will help you see the thoughts that come up, the emotions that come up, the feelings that come up, and it'll help you see kind of the programs or the cycles that are running in your life so that you can essentially decide and choose, hey, this cycle isn't really working out for me, right? I'm not going to beat myself up over it, but how can we, get curious and improve it or replace it with something better, etc., right? So, I would say that is a keystone habit in order to, because if you're in a shame cycle, it can be hard to know that, right? It can be hard
Yeah.
without that awareness, without that strong level of awareness, which I have found that only comes from that consistent meditation habit.
Yeah.
Without
Absolutely.
that, right, you don't really know what to do, and you don't really know what is running your behavior, right? Because you're not aware of it. And it can be hard to be aware of it when you're in it, right? And so, there can be different things that give you perspective, right? Plant medicine, sickness, illnesses, sudden loss or death, etc., of a family member, whatever it might be, right? Like these awakening moments can help get you out of the cycle, at least for a temporary period of time, so that you can see, oh wow, I was really stuck in that cycle for X, Y, Z reason, right? Um,
Mhm.
so it obviously depends, but getting perspective somehow, right? If you're feeling in a rut, right? If you're feeling in not a virtuous cycle, well, you got to do something to get that perspective, right? You can completely change your environment, go somewhere across the world, whatever it might be. Plant medicine can help completely change the perspective as well, right? So
Mhm.
also someone else, like a close friend, these sorts of things, right? Like or even therapy, right? Therapists, etc., right? The whole idea is that they can help you become more aware of the cycle that you might be in, or the patterns that
Mhm.
might be playing out in your life, right? So ask for help,
Yeah.
right? Like this is the whole idea of self-love, is being vulnerable enough or having the courage to ask others for help, right? Like that's the whole reason why we're here, is to help each other, right? We're all here to help each other awaken to our highest selves, right? So, and we can't do it alone, right? Nobody has done it alone. Nobody will. And right, we don't need to. There's like 7,
Yeah.
8 billion people on this earth. So, you know, reach out for help from someone.
Yeah. So awareness is really like the foundation because you need to be aware to start making these changes. As Carl Jung says, until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And yeah, me personally too, I've seen meditation as whenever I work with a client, that's like the first thing that's the first habit I, help them install because it really, everything else, finding those limiting beliefs, changing those beliefs, getting out of those cycles, those mental cycles is only possible if you are able to aware and you have that kind of muscle to shift your focus. And yeah, that's exactly what meditation does.
Yeah, exactly that.
Beautiful, brother. Is there any last words you want to give for people looking to install better habits?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the last words would be just take it easy, right? Take it step by step.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is awesome, bro. We yeah, I did a few podcasts the past few weeks, with psychologists and stuff. This one I think is going to add the most value to our audience. You were just so succinct. You were so like clear with how to do these things in a very practical way that I think is really going to move people. Oh, and lastly,
Yeah, man.
if anyone wants to learn more about you, like I know you don't use social media much, but is there any way people, or is there, yeah, do you offer anything? Do you take on any clients for habits, or for productivity, anything? Yeah, if people want to learn more about you, is there any way?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I try to stay off social media, etc. But I think the best way would be through a friend of a friend, right? Through
Yeah.
someone like yourself. You can find me on LinkedIn probably. I may or may not reply, but or check out the high performance house set in Colombia.
And are you open to taking clients if anyone was interested and they wanted to reach out through me to you?
Yeah, definitely open, right? Always looking for different ways in which I can help serve the collective consciousness, right? And really help others, right? Kind of activate and fulfill their potential that they have.
Beautiful. All right, bro. Yeah, thank you so much. This was yeah, this is awesome. There's like so many other questions I wanted to dive into, but yeah, I think for habits it was perfect.
For sure, bro. Yeah, man. I appreciate you as well, and uh, you got to send me over the podcast information, etc., so that I can check out your work and what you're doing. But I
Totally,
think it's
man. Yeah.
fantastic, the endeavor that you're on, the journey that you're on.
Yeah, it's been awesome. The podcast especially. It's been so much fun because I get to just interview, cool people like you. I get
Yeah,
to meet also new
that's
people and
dope.
it's, yeah, talk about just dope shit, that I like to talk about,
Hmm.
and then is also helping people. It's like value
Yeah,
add content. It's just a huge win-win for me.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely. That's great. And you're doing full-time coaching, I imagine, as well. And you
So
eventually
no,
sold the
actually, so I still
business,
have the
or?
e-commerce store. I kind of took a little
Okay.
bit of a different approach where I'm looking to kind of build a team. So I am building a team now to basically remove
Hmm.
myself from needing to work on it. So that's kind of
Okay.
taking up half
Nice.
my time, and the other half is really focused on content. Instead of going right into
Hmm.
coaching clients, you don't have like one coaching client to kind of to practice with, but I'm really focused on
Hmm.
just making content, building an audience. And the podcast too
Yeah.
is such an amazing way for me to see what everyone else is doing, what other coaches are doing, so I can kind of
Hmm.
develop
Yeah.
my kind of where I fit in kind of in the market, like where I can add the most value in the best way
Right.
possible. And the
Yeah.
podcast has been
Absolutely.
perfect for that.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
super cool. Um, yeah, and I'm sure as well, like, right, like I've previously been really diving into Chat GPT and AI, etc., for specifically for content creation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Curious, curious if really you've utilized it much yet,
We're
or
using it
still.
mostly to like get ideas and come up with a bit of scripts. So when we do like
Right.
street interviews, like ChatGPT is like our number one brainstorming team member. It just comes up with
Yeah.
just amazing ideas and just gets the mind going so we can brainstorm
Right.
other stuff. Um,
Nice.
I'm looking into some like video AI tools that can help us do some just cool kind of animations where, yeah, I think that can help make some really good engaging videos.
Right.
And then we use it for like, for example, for this podcast, we can put it into use an AI tool that will turn it into a script. We can tell it to make show notes on the key highlights and like where it's going to be. So, we don't have
Right.
to manually do all of that. Yeah. So
Right.
many different
Right.
ways that can be used. And yeah, I keep learning kind of new ways every day on how I can use it, which
Hmm.
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Super cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you, and thanks for having me, and looking forward to what you continue to build.
Yeah. Thank you so much, brother, for hopping on this. Yeah, this was so much fun. And I'm glad we got to catch up a little bit. All right, bro. Well, take care in Medellin.
Likewise.
Hope to talk to you soon. And yeah, let me know if there's anything I can ever do to help you. Of course, feel free to reach out. And yeah, all right. Take care, brother.
Definitely, bro. Sounds good. Cheers, man. Enjoy.
Cheers. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us till the end of this episode. If you liked the episode, please leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to. It makes a huge, huge help for us. So please do that. We have some amazing people already lined up for the next several podcasts. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.